Welcome to Leading Veterinary Teams, the podcast for people-first leaders in veterinary medicine who are ready to ditch the burnout script and lead with purpose. I'm Suzanne Thomas, veterinary technician, executive coach, and fellow leader in the trenches. Around here, we talk real-life leadership, boundaries, influence, team culture, and what it actually takes to build happy, high-performing hospitals. No fluff, no guilt, just the truth, some tools, and maybe a little tough love. If you're ready, let's get into it. Today on Leading Veterinary Teams on Air, I'm joined with Claire Pickens, a certified veterinary practice manager, entrepreneur, and business strategist with over 30 years in animal health. Claire's helped countless veterinary owners turned big ideas into bank-ready business plans, and she's led operations across the country with expertise in leadership, HR, and practice management. We're talking about the shift from managing someone else's business to running your own, and the lessons every aspiring owner should hear. So thank you, Claire, for joining today. You've had such a rich career in veterinary business leadership. Can you share a little bit about your journey and what initially drew you into the veterinary space?
The roots are pretty humble. They're pretty
sure.
Genuine. I grew up in Glen Ellen, California, on the back roads and country roads. There were not that many jobs that somebody could have as a teenager in that area. So you were gonna work with animals. Highly likely you were gonna work with animals somehow.
Okay.
So I worked on horse farms, and
Okay.
that was my first exposure to really liking the medicine side, because I am 6 feet tall, and I could lead the stallions to the block, and I could help handle the mares and the foals alongside the large animal vet. So that was my start.
I see that.
That was by lack of fear and size that put me into that role. And then I just kept going on that thread despite what everybody else wanted me to do. I actually went to school originally for engineering, and
Okay.
while I was there, I got a job at a small animal hospital.
Interesting.
So
It's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny how life will take us that way. I actually started off in school for psychology. I had no idea that the world would bring me to where I'm at today. So funny how things happen, huh?
Just kept looping back. It was one of those topics that wouldn't go away. Even if there were sometimes I kind of wanted it to go away, it still just never went away.
Oh yeah, life has a funny way of making sure that we get to where we are supposed to go, regardless of whether we want to or not.
Exactly.
Before you became an owner and a consultant, you're a CVPM, so you worked in practice, right? You were a practice manager.
Yeah.
What?
I did that out of order, actually.
Okay, so
I was a tech. I did
okay.
ER tech, large animal, small animal, and then I worked in some central system stuff.
Okay.
And that's just where I'm wired a little funny. I just really, after seeing all that, thought that it couldn't be that hard to open one. So I actually had never managed a practice before opening a practice.
Okay.
So that was risk. It was a little bit of a risky move.
Yeah.
Some might say. I had already developed coaching and leadership skills, and I already had a good understanding of all the moving parts of a practice. But yeah, I did that a little out of order.
So then this question might feel probably really big, but what did you learn that shaped the way that you lead today? And I'm sure it's probably a lot, right? But in that process of owning before even managing, right? You're managing as you're owning, right? Mm-hmm. What are some of those like pivotal things that you learned to become who you or what you do now?
I think it was a huge advantage at the time. As I think back on it, like I didn't know everything, and I knew I didn't know everything. And so like I really absorbed the ideas from the team, and I counted on them to a large extent because I didn't know what I didn't know. All I knew was it was going to work, and the ingenuity and inventiveness and teamwork and creativity was going to get it there, and just community involvement. That was all going to get it there. I was sure of that. But I think as a young leader, without all the formal training and without the prior experience, I was an open book. And I think that the as I went through my career, I really look back and appreciate that open bookedness, because the more education you get sometimes, or the more experience you I mean, you might start thinking you know a lot more than you actually do. And so, like, I don't know, what I learned is keep that book writable. Like, you got to be willing to have your story rewritten, and for people to tell you you're full of crap and that you don't know what you're talking about. And you
Yeah,
have
there's something about being humble, right? Like not just from the beginning, but even now, right? I recently was in a conversation where I said that. I think knowing knowing what I know, but also knowing that I don't know everything, and even at this point in my career, being able to still learn every single day and being able to admit like, hey, I thought that I knew it. I thought I knew what I was talking about yesterday. And I just learned something new that has actually reshaped the way that I am going to do things moving forward. So maybe the advice that I gave yesterday, or a week ago, or a month ago, or a year ago is now a little bit different. And this is why, and is what I'm going to do moving forward. Do you feel like that's kind of a similar vein of how you've kind of moved forward?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also feel like every degree certification I have was essentially a confirmation of lessons learned along the way. I didn't say, well, I'm going to study for the CVPM, get the CVPM, and then that's going to show the world that I know these things. It was more like I did it for 10 years, and I looked at it as like, let me just like take the test and see if I learn anything along the way. It was the same with all of them. Like, the degrees felt that way too, is that the School of Hard Knocks is a really hard school.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, you learn along the way that you're just, by stubbing your toe, by making mistakes, by pissing somebody off, by saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. I made some terrible employee mistakes early on because my experience in leadership was more in coaching, and the vernacular and way you talk on an athletic court is just a little different than in a business setting. So I made some cool, interesting mistakes early on.
I think what's interesting that we have similar there is I'm a NASM CPT, and a lot of people ask me when they see all of the letters behind my name, what is that? Because they're like, LVT and CVT in the vet world, they know what all of those letters mean. And then they see a bunch of other letters at the end. They're like, what the heck is that? And I'm like, oh, I'm a personal trainer. And they're like, well, where does that fit in? And I'm like, oh, actually, the fitness industry and vet med leadership and teaching people like fitness, there's actually a lot that is similar. And so I believe it or not, even though the vernacular is different, I think there's a lot of similarities in coaching on the court, if you will. I'm assuming basketball or something just because of your height. For anyone who has not met Claire in person, when we met in person, I was like, whoa, you're tall. And I'm a very small human, so anyone is tall for me. But yeah, but I'm 5 foot tall, so Claire being 6 foot and me being 5 foot was actually kind of amusing. I think there's a lot that can actually be pulled from coaching, whether it be basketball or volleyball or whatever, any time of sports coaching or even fitness coaching, to what we do in a clinic. What are some of the things that you find are similar that have transferred?
Emotional distress. I coached every different age level in basketball and track, anything from kindergarten all the way through high school. And there's a common thread, and that thread goes right over to veterinary medicine. People break down, and sometimes they don't know how to break down, and whether that's physically or emotionally. A real coach is not the coach when people are the strongest and doing the best. A real coach is the one that's able to help pick the pieces up in a way that keeps people wanting to go forward. Because it's pretty easy in athletics at certain levels to be like, well, maybe the piano is really more your thing. Maybe it's not basketball, but that's not really very functional, right? So like
Yeah.
it's actually the same exact thing in vet med, where sometimes people's motivation to get into it is the love of animals, and then they're like, oh my god, this has got a lot of gross things and a lot of very sciencey things, and the
Yeah.
clients aren't always nice. And so what is a coach supposed to do in those moments? A coach is going to get you through the hard spot. It's going to hurt a little,
Yeah.
and it's not always going to feel great, but you will be proud of yourself when you get past these particular moments in time. So that to me was like one to one, the
Yeah.
emotional distress and push through. So I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the same for you.
Yeah, yeah. I find a lot of people that have either coached or have been on teams in school or have had a similar experience, maybe don't even realize that that experience is transferable. Again, whether it be coaching or being on a sports team or something of that nature. I was in a sorority in college, similar, right? Like just having that community experience where you have to work together for a goal, it really does help their transferable skills. And I think that the emotional piece for it, I think the other piece for me is often that when I talk to team members that are newer, and they don't understand why they haven't figured it out yet. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
practice, right? How many times, especially, you think back to, and I don't want to get too sports because I don't want to lose too many people, but when you're learning basketball, believe it or not, I was like obsessed with basketball as a kid. I know I'm short and I stopped growing at some point and was like, I guess I have to learn something else and be obsessed with something else because I'm not Muggsy Bogart. But I would just dribble and just be practicing in the backyard every day after school, and taking 3-point shots and just doing it over and over and over for years. And I got really good, up to a point. And but that took a long time, and I think that skill of practice transferred to vet med when I became a technician, of that practicing and practicing and practicing phlebotomy, right? I became an oncology technician and I was really, really good. I still am really, really good at blood draws. Why? Because I just practiced and practiced and practiced.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not just poking animals, but it was coming home and poking bananas and like just playing with syringes and getting that muscle memory. And people laugh at me because they're like, when I talk to newer technicians or people who want to be technicians, I'm like, take these syringes home and play with them. I'm not kidding. And they're like, oh, no. I'm like, no, guys, seriously,
No,
like, get the
seriously.
muscle memory. And even when I talk to leaders, I don't know if you have that same experience. It's it's talking to yourself in the mirror. It's saying those things over it. It's practice, right? It's those same theories, right? It's practicing the everything you're doing over and over and over again until you're a master at it.
I think the thing that we could just do a whole lot better in vet med in general, just any leadership environment, but vet med in general, we're too concerned about being perfect. Like that's the thing that I really, and I think maybe
Good
that's why I
point.
like having both worlds kind of concurrently going. While I owned the practice, I coached a lot of teams,
Yeah.
basketball, track. And it was nice balance for me because it was a reminder of mistakes are part of the game. The mistakes are
Yeah.
not like, oops, we made a mistake. No, they're an actual stat on the paper. It's a
Yeah.
mistake. The turnovers, the missed things, the losses, the wins, the losses, they're all a part of the experience. And I don't know why, like, well, I do know why, because I've walked 10 miles in the shoes, but that first angry client that you deal with, there's a high probability you're going to screw that up. Like that
Mhm.
conversation might not go very well, or maybe only half the conversation goes well. And I just
Yeah.
like, I think it's okay for people to go, you know what? I'm going to kind of keep track of my stats here. Maybe the next time I go for 3/4 of that conversation going well,
Yeah.
or maybe I realize I'm not the right player on the team to have that conversation, which is like in sports, you can sub somebody in that's a specialist in that area. Like,
Yeah.
can we maybe do that? Can we maybe just see sometimes we're just not the right person to handle that
Yet.
situation?
Yes.
And that's okay. That's, you don't have
Right.
to be, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, yeah, there's some parallels that I think need to come a little closer to for people to feel healthy about
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah. Feel healthy about mistakes and also feel healthy about that learning process, right? To your point, we're chasing this ideal of perfection, but remember that the profession that we're in, it's
Mhm.
medicine. At what point was medicine ever black and white? There's no like there medicine's not black and white. We all know that, right? Like there's 4,000 reasons for vomiting and diarrhea, right? If
Yes.
somebody calls and says my dog is having vomiting and diarrhea, what do I do? You're like, I don't know, bring your pet to the vet so that we can look at them because there could be so many reasons, right? So why do we think that there's going to be one solid answer for everything?
I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. I see it too in like some other professions where there's just this expectation of got to get it right every time, perfect. And I'm like, well, that's unrealistic. That's just not life in
Yeah.
general. And I think the good leadership maybe needs to sway a little bit. I think some of the over corporatization, some of those concepts, they're SOPs, training manuals, all of the evaluations are great. They have a purpose. However, it also like systematizes a human. And if the human can't see past that to still see that they're still a human and that they might need long. I love the syringe activities. Like I used to have a lot of fun with that. Like you're only going
Yeah.
to get as much liquid to drink as you can move from this cup to this cup with these syringes. And it's
Yeah.
fun. You can have a lot of fun with it, but like maybe we're not taking as much time to do that because we've got to hit a metric, right?
Hmm.
But take that time. I mean, it's fun, it's engaging, it's not everybody's going to do it in the same period of time. Not everybody's going to be as good at it. I mean, that's just a reality, right?
Yeah. What are your thoughts about challenging that thought process about that whole having to hit a metric, right? I mean, we live in this world, at least I live in the world of working in corporate medicine, and I've only ever worked in corporate medicine. So that's my lens. But
Mhm.
even in private, I assume there's good, it's business. So we have metrics that we have to hit. We have targets that we're looking for. But how do you take or look at that? We have these metrics that we have to hit. I personally, I am the long game person, and I take some steps to build some relationships first. And there's some stuff that I do first that will get there, but it might take a little bit longer with me. But what are your thoughts on this whole we have metrics, we have to go fast, we have to do. How do you kind of coach people through that?
Well, my personal opinion is that the vast majority of metrics in business are lagging indicators, not leading indicators. There's only one leading indicator in my mind, and that is people. Literally, if you ask somebody in the next morning when they come in, what did you talk about at the dinner table last night? And their answer is, well, I talked about how much I hated so and so and how this client was a jerk. Well, then there you go. There's your leading indicator. Something's wrong. That's the only data you need to fix in that moment. Otherwise, most of the other ones, I don't. It's just been my personal style. It was a choice I made very, very early on in ownership was to not lead by metrics and to coach the business results. I knew the metrics. I mean, an owner, like, I mean, I'm either
Yeah.
going to pay the bills or not. The bills are going to get paid somehow. I'm going to sell this practice someday, somehow. So that was clear. But I never felt like I had to say, we need to reach 18% here. Like I never ever felt like I had to say that out loud to a team. And I think I've carried that through pretty well. Hopefully anybody that listens to this, if I'm wrong, send me a private message, please. Don't comment. Um, but I don't think you need to say those things out loud a lot of the time. I think you know where the business needs to move. So if you know what it's going to take to get to that metric, coach towards the behavior, coach towards the skill, coach towards the outcome you want to get, not towards the metric. Metrics are highly disengaging. And by the way, most people don't get a compensation increase off of a metric improvement. So I have found that's one of the leading reasons not to lean on them like that. Because if you're like, we need to increase profitability by, well, the natural next conversation is how do I increase my profitability? Because I just did it for you. So when does
Yeah.
it happen for me? And that's natural. We shouldn't get mad at people for saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think coach to behaviors, coach to outcomes, coach to how you want patients treated, and that to me is finesse in leadership rather than just throwing numbers on a wall.
Sure. For you as a business owner, how do you balance your personal leadership style with the financial and operational realities that sometimes require tough calls?
That's always tough.
Yeah.
Having lived through a recession, well, I was leading nationally through the pandemic, so there were
Okay.
certainly a lot of moments then where you know what you need to get out of the business, but then you also know what you have to do to retain people's sanity
Yeah.
throughout that. And there was a lot of negotiation through that. And I think you just have to decide who you are in those moments and decide, like, am I okay with making a hard business decision to protect the larger picture in this moment? Or, like, to your point, or am I okay with a bit of a sacrifice on the business side to play a little bit longer game here and maybe not make the best in the moment business decision, but this will be the best decision 6 months from now. So I think people just have to decide who they are and how patient they are in those moments. So throughout my career, going to make the people decision and figure it out. Like, I'm just going to be like, okay, that cost me something. I need to figure that out. So I'll figure it out. And then I'll usually ask the team for help to figure that out. I'll be like, look, so we made this choice just now, and now we gotta figure it out. And
Yeah.
I can't think of a time that people didn't come together to figure it out in those
Yeah.
moments, if you
Yeah.
give them a chance to.
Yeah. Do you think that there's one moment or one thing or one person or something that happened to you when you were younger or something, right? Something that has really shaped the leader you've become, the reason why people has is the focus for you versus like believing in the KPIs and letting the business side of things like take over like a lot of others do.
Well, I grew up in a very businessy household. That's probably a driver. Metrics were no stranger to my kitchen table. My mom was in banking. My dad was in medical imaging sales. So I think there were plenty of moments, if I'm honest, that I wanted people to be more of a conversation. And they did genuinely love their teams and they told lots of good stories. But I think I had a personal takeaway from that, like, okay, me as a leader,
Yeah.
the math to me has never been the hardest part of the job. The hardest part of the job is the nuance of humans. And so I was like, I'm
Yeah.
going to focus on that whenever I get this chance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had some very, very dramatic personal things happen. Like, halfway through the ownership of that business, my co-owner made some pretty dramatic life choices that hurt me very, very personally. I had to decide in that moment where I was going to put my focus, and that's just kind of carried forward. I just put my focus on the experience of the people and made sure the business was healthy so that they didn't have to focus on that part of the conversation, because those can be stressful, particularly during the recession. That they were worried. What they were worried
Yeah.
about is, you're going to cut my job.
Yeah.
I didn't want them worrying about that.
Yeah.
So I actually cut my own pay during that time period and then eked it back up afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely had a lot of personal things happen that make me understand that in those moments that I was the lowest and maybe I needed a timeout, it wasn't a metric that saved me. It was some other human
Yeah.
that saved me. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, it does because then you know what that feels like. So then you are that person for others, right? It sounds like when you're sitting at the kitchen table and your parents are talking about their businesses and such, you're thinking to your mind like, what about Samantha, right? Like, how does
Exactly.
that impact Ron? And so I imagine myself doing the same thing because your story sounds so similar to mine. I mean, I talk so much about team-based leadership and how do we ask more questions, get more curious about how these things, whatever these things are that we're doing or that we're asked to do, impact the people that are actually being asked to do them.
Hmm.
And it it sounds very similar to the way that you've managed your business and your businesses that you've owned. For me, it's always just been general curiosity of people and their behavior. I think there's a couple of pivotal moments in my past, and me just being me, curious, and kind of
Yeah.
where that came from. For someone in a leadership role now who's considering ownership, what are some of the skills that you think they should be building today to be prepared for that?
Well, they probably have, if they're considering practice ownership. I know people have a lot of imposter syndrome, I myself included. They probably realistically already have all the medical skills that they need. So I would hope they would not beat themselves up in that particular area, because they just need to kind of write down their belief system in that and go with it. It's your own practice. You don't have a regional leader, you don't have a national, it's your own practice. Whatever outcomes you want to get. And if you want to treat things with bubble gum, treat things with bubble gum. It's your practice. So that's number one, is own who you are and don't try to replicate somebody else. Be you 100%. Other than that, I think HR is probably the topic that I think I find most people are the most lacking on. Understanding like rules, like what is overtime and what's the difference between a 1099 and a W-2, and what does at will mean? Oh my goodness, that is the most misunderstood one. At will is basically like I can just look at you and fire you, but that's not really
Yeah,
what it is.
it's not.
Uh, so I mean, I would recommend people at least get some baseline education in that area, or have a subject matter expert on their speed dial so that they can
Yeah,
lean on that. If you talk to the banks, they'll say the number one area is marketing, that people believe that once the lights come on, that there's things that just magically happen. They don't anymore. Customers have to be lured out of our
uh-huh. You
uh,
sure do.
so I would say HR and marketing are probably the two areas. There's just so many experts now. I can't see a good reason why people should feel lost anymore.
Yeah.
We're
Do
all
you,
we're all on
do
speed
you
dial.
know that there's so much information that it's almost overwhelming, right? Like there's so much. You don't have to necessarily go to school to learn anything because everything's for free on YouTube.
Hmm.
What would your advice be for somebody who is overwhelmed by all of that?
Just focus on the stuff that you're the most uncomfortable with. I mean, my dad probably gave me the best advice in that area. After they got over the fact I was going to do something they didn't approve of, that I didn't have a degree for, and I had not managed a practice. They're like, "What are you doing? That's $1 million." Once they all got past that, he was like, "Listen, you can earn your own doctorate degree in just about any topic you want if you're willing to commit to one book a month and one article a day." And he's like, just do that. And my recommendation would be read the things that you're the least knowledgeable about. Like if you don't know a lot about finance, find one article a day on finance. And it doesn't need to be in vet med.
Yeah,
I actually would recommend not making it all about vet med, because there's too many of the same voice, and we're a small community. It's
yeah,
not that any of the voices are bad voices, they're all great voices, but there's a lot of repeat voices in vet
yeah,
med, in publishing and such. So I would say go read about something else. Go read about,
yeah,
like, why is Target struggling right now? What's Starbucks doing to reinvent themselves? Like, it's really important to just focus on the things that maybe you're the least knowledgeable in that moment. And then they have to be willing to learn on the fly. There has to be that willingness. That first time something pops up you don't know, which is probably going to be a network error. So, none of your printers work. None of your You're not connected to the internet. Like that is probably going to befuddle. That's a
yeah.
very common new business owner
A
befuddling.
100%. Have an
Yes,
IT person at your ready.
exactly.
If you are not good with computers, have an IT person or someone who can like play with wires at your ready. 100%.
Exactly.
That is
Exactly.
so
But until then, just start reading things on things you have the least amount of comfortability in right now. And it'll grow.
funny.
It just kind of grows steadily.
Yeah, it's that compound effect, right? It's just learning something a little bit at a time. I love that you said that. I think that that's really great advice, not to just get so stuck in vet med. I love that we have so much. CE and practice management and personal development now at the conferences. But when people come to me and they ask me, where I've learned so much of what I've learned, I'm like not at the practice management or the personal development CE, because it's, no offense guys, but it's just the same stuff recycled over and over again. Where have I learned it? I've learned it from all of these books, right?
Yep.
And all of the things that um all of the YouTube videos and all of the other stuff that's out there.
Mhm.
There's some really, really great resources from CEOs of other companies and people doing really amazing things that are willing to just tell you what they're doing and how
Yes.
they've done it, all for free on the internet. Listen to them, right? Because it's out there. And there's podcasts with people that are making a whole lot more money than I am that can tell you like all of their secrets for free. It's there. You just got to consume it, and you don't have to all consume it in one sitting, just like small bits over time
Yeah. And they
instead of
make a
just
lot of
scrolling
mistakes.
social media. Yeah, and they talk
Right.
about that a lot too, right? Like
Yeah.
how many mistakes they've made, and it's really eye-opening to see some of these people who have had like lots and lots of businesses and how long they've been doing it for. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna just keep on trucking, right?
Your first idea might not be great. I love
Right.
listening to those stories because, well, one, you learn that these people with massive success took some sort of massive risk at some
Yeah.
point that is larger than most of us would be willing to take.
Hmm.
And so we're not like, if you're not trying to be a gazillionaire, you're probably going to take a little bit lower level risk to get to be a 100,000aire or
Yes.
whatever it is that you're trying to reach. So I mean, it's just
Right.
it's a good reality. But I totally agree with you. I have not learned most of what I've learned about being a leader within industry. I've learned it from everywhere. And there was a point at which decisions were made about expanding or not expanding the practice, and just stay in the course and prep it for sales, stay the course. But that also meant my skill set had kind of outgrown the practice a little bit. So I actually signed up to be a speaker with Fred Pryor and got certified in bunches of different topics. I had over 20 topics, and I would travel and speak. And that taught me a lot because
Yeah.
I had to learn my audience and I had to deep dive into that topic. Speaking is one of the best ways to make sure you feel pretty good about a topic because you're about to
Yeah.
stand up and pretend you know what you're talking about. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you get to see the evaluations, which kind of gives you an idea if you did have any idea what you were talking about. So, yeah, that was great. I highly recommend that, even if it's just like speaking at a local school or the library will let people speak.
Yeah.
Take a little risk, maybe speak
Yeah.
on a topic you're not that comfortable with, and
Yeah.
that's a great learning
Or
experience.
get on a podcast if you're too like nervous about speaking in front of a group of people. I know people. I've had people ask me how I'm comfortable speaking in groups, and I'm like, oh, I have a secret. I used to teach group fitness. And even funnier, how did I
Hmm.
get into that? I went up to a group fitness instructor. I was so shy, which people who meet me now are like, there's no way. I'm like, I was so shy, but I was like, oh, sort of like what you had said. Like, that can't be too hard. I walked up to her and I was like, what you do cannot be too hard. It was very hard,
It
by
was
the way.
very
But
hard.
it was so hard
So
because I was, if you're, I don't know if you're familiar with body pump, but it's a class where you're literally like lifting a barbell and teaching at the same time. So you have to move your body and speak at the same time and learn choreography. It's a lot for an ADHD brain to know all of that. And so anyway, fast forward, I that's where it started, was just having the courage to ask the question of how do you do that. And then I paid for the training, which meant I had to go, did the training,
yeah,
passed the training, became a teacher, and like the rest is kind of history. I kept putting myself in these uncomfortable situations, and here we are now, right? And it's just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, whatever that means. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
speaking. It doesn't have to be group fit. It doesn't have to be whatever I did, but it's putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations to grow yourself, right? And put yourself out there because you'll never know if you don't try. What's the worst that
It's
could happen?
it's true, and it could be anything. Like, um, yeah, I mean, I tried little pyramid schemey things in my very young 20s, and that was actually my first exposure to. I was cleaning products, and it was like, I don't know. I was the parents also weren't nuts about that, but it didn't last very long because it turns out you have to spend more than 2 hours a week to be successful at something.
Yes.
So the sales pitch wasn't quite accurate, but it did teach me. I did actually like doing the presentation, and I
Hmm.
liked that part of it. And I was like, well, I did not expect that I would like that, because I, like you, I was kind of like a don't look at me, kind of don't
Hmm.
look at me. Um,
Yeah.
but I was like, this isn't that bad. Standing in front of
Yeah.
a room and holding a little meeting, and then that actually greatly helped when I was doing staff meetings for my own practice. It was like, oh, now I got to stand in front of these humans, and
Yeah.
and then I would give them opportunities to stand in front of their peers and be vulnerable and maybe learn a topic and share a topic. And I think those things are fun ways to not put so much pressure on yourself to learn something new. So if you're opening a business, those are great ways to do that. Like,
Yeah.
just kind of expand your comfortability, because that's probably the thing that people find out the hard way the most, is that it's not about what you know, it's about how well you adapt and how
Hmm.
well you can, like, take the little gut punch and get back up. Because I guarantee anybody that does it, reading a 1-star review when you are employed by somebody else hurts a lot. Reading a 1-star review when you own the business,
Hmm.
I mean, you might just stay up all night crying. Like, it is a
Hmm.
very personal experience when it's your business that
Yeah.
somebody wrote that about. And you're just like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? So
Yeah.
it's not even about what you know in those moments. It's just the adaptability of, well, I better figure it out. I better,
Yeah.
gotta do something.
Yeah. And in those moments, I imagine you really have to be able to remove that amygdala response and bring it back to the prefrontal cortex, right? It's not even like being able to protect ourselves, it's being able to recognize I'm having a response right now
Hmm.
to something. And okay, let me sit with that. It's not because I did something wrong, or maybe it is something that I did wrong. How do I fix this for next time? Because, like what we said before, it's not about perfection, it's about learning from whatever it is that happens. So, somebody had a negative experience in my clinic, or somebody had a negative experience with whatever it is that my business is. How do I make sure that that doesn't happen in the future? I
Hmm.
think that that's the like moving from the emotional response to like what do we do now from that, right?
Yeah, that's being your own coach in that
Yeah.
moment. That's what business owners have to do, because there isn't, well, unless you have a consultant on call, which I would recommend, have friends that are consultants, have consultants on call. You're going to be your own coach in those moments. You have to call the time out, step outside yourself, give you a bit of advice. And if in those moments all you do is self criticize, it just becomes its own nasty little blocker of, like, you just,
Yeah.
becomes very difficult to move past, and it becomes a very personalized experience, rather than just going, whoa, time out, like something went off the rails, and let me just write down what went wrong just right now and figure out what I can circle on this piece of paper to fix it somehow. Don't be afraid to get advice. Pride's a big blocker, to progress.
Yeah.
It's Can't be afraid to ask for a little bit of an assist.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Here we're bringing it back to sports. What's the most rewarding part of defining your own leadership as an owner, and what's been the most surprising challenge?
The most important part is really defining your values as a leader, and not just your value, like economically and what you want to earn out of the business, but your values in what you're going to do in the hard moments and how you want to be seen in the community, particularly in this day and age when people can be a little loud online. Knowing who you are and knowing the things you stand for without necessarily having to post a bunch of letters and words on the wall. Part of the planning process leading up to your business should be very focused on that. Like, who are you in the hard moments? Who are you going to be that first time you need to fire an employee or a client? or the first time you need to celebrate, because that's sometimes ego gets in the way in those moments too. So I think that singularly for business owners, practice owners, is just defining that about yourself, staying true to that, writing it down in your own journal, and then watching how you adapt as you grow, because money changes everything, and team size changes a lot too. And so it's easy to let bitterness sneak in, or ego or pride or any of those things. So that's the most important thing. I have been surprised at my own resilience over the years. I'm really kind of a sissy underneath. I really am kind of a sissy, and like, I mean, and people don't necessarily know that about me, but I'm kind of a softie. And there's just been several times that I'm like, my God, you got back up. Like, you got back up, and somehow you figured it out. And almost none of what you figured out was in a textbook somewhere.
Yeah.
So like, I'm proud of myself for those moments, but those moments still surprise me when I look back on them, and I'm like, whew, well, that was a doozy. Like, how'd you find your way out of that mess? I mean,
Something tells me that one day you'll look back and you won't think that. One day you'll look back and you'll have words to put to that.
yeah,
Something tells me there'll be a sentence somewhere that will encompass that, right? That it's that resilience, I think, speaks volumes. Yeah.
yeah. Well, my
Without
husband,
having to say anything, right? Like
that's right.
it does. It says a lot about you as a person, you as a leader. It says that you're somebody that we want in our corner, because when things get hard, you're not just gonna lay down. You're gonna fight, especially if it's something that's worth fighting for. And so I think the people like that are people that are successful, and so that's why you've had the success that you've had. And one day, whether that day is today or tomorrow or sometime in the future, you'll look back and you'll have some words other than that you're a softie. But that resilience, I think, is something to be super proud of.
Yeah,
Where, actually, before I ask you that, are you a reader?
I am. I have a disability in fiction. I can't read. I don't know why, but it just like I instantly zone out and go somewhere else in my own brain. I'll make up my own story. That's not a problem, but I can't read somebody else's made up story. So I read lots of self-help books.
Same. I ask that because I'm surrounded by them, which is why I was so easy to just pick them up. If you, this is always a really hard question, but if you had to pick one, like rapid fire, one book to say, like, here's the book, this is where you start, go. What is the one book that you would hand to the person who's like ready to or wants to own something?
Well, this is a book I often buy for people. The Halo Effect. It
Okay.
goes through the 8 most common. They're basically confirmation biases, different ways that we idolize and make things more than they are, and then we convince ourselves it's true. And that book, when I read it, it was like an eye opener, because I was like, whoa, I've been lying to myself about some things, and that is not. I made a halo around it, and I convinced myself that there were certain true, whether it was about the business or about just life. I was like, whoa. So it is a business book, but
Yeah,
it very clearly explains all of how people do that.
I love that. Where can people connect with you or learn more about the work that you do?
Well, certainly LinkedIn. That's a pretty easy way to connect with me. I have a website, smallbusiness-dreams.com. I've got all sort of stuff on there. I've got questionnaires that are totally free on there if people just want to dabble around in the different areas of a business plan. I even have coloring pages on there if you like need a break and you
Love
color.
that.
Yeah,
I might have to download some of those in color today.
there's a whole self-care section on my
I
website.
love that. I love that. Awesome. Is there anything that you want to share before that is like burning on your heart that you want the world to know before we go?
I think it's just, I talk to a lot of people that are really fearful of judgment. That's probably one of the first things I hear when I start working with somebody on their plan is they're like, well, you might not like where I start, or you might not like where I am, or maybe I'm embarrassed I wrote this down or I didn't write this down. And I just want to let people know, just let all that go, because just part of business ownership is just being you and being proud of who you are. So like, I think even in corporate roles, because I've been on both sides of this fear of judgment needs to kind of get squashed a little bit. And just if I had a second book to plug, the How to Be Enough is a second book I would highly recommend, because you're fine. Like, you're fine just the way you are. Maybe you need a little help with one thing, but you're fine just the way you are.
I love that. With
Yep.
that, thank you.
Yeah.
Seriously, thank you so, so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you today, and um, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, this is lovely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Leading Veterinary Teams on Air. If this episode hit home, share it with a colleague, tag us on Instagram or TikTok, or leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe. It helps more leaders like you find their way. And remember, your job is not to do it all, it's to lead in a way that lasts. I'll see you next time.